Hey Dave, we're gonna talk about this now, okay? We're gonna talk about this. A couple things, I guess Jim, Tommy's not gonna be here. And Chris isn't gonna be here. Yeah, right. Okay, so they called in, so this is it. So we'll get after it, get things that show on the road. We've asked the directors to take a very broad stroke to the future, and rather than do it with some bullet point stuff, I asked the directors to how they can ensure the city's gonna continue to grow, what their priorities are, and then eventually at the end, what I'd like to do before we leave tonight is keep this in mind during the process. We'll pass out a sheet, and have everybody just list your top 5 priorities based on this discussion. So that it'll give us a, yeah, we should do a roll call.
I just didn't know if you were gonna go into it or.
Yeah, we'll go into it now. Okay, they're not gonna be here, so we have a strategic planning session or a workshop session of council of Monday, April 7th, 2025. Clerk will call the roll.
Day,
Here.
DiGeronimo,
Here.
Trakas,
Present.
Togliatti,
Here.
Veverka.
Here.
Okay, again, we're taking a little different approach to strategic planning. We've asked the directors to take a very broad stroke to the future, focused, looking at how they see the priorities of the city, what are the priorities for them. And so, we have the handouts for
Those are the
everybody.
handouts for everything.
Okay. And again, before we leave tonight, everybody will have asked to list your top 5 priorities based on the discussion so that we can start honing in on, see if we can come up with a strategic or a strategy that incorporates as many of your concepts, ideas as possible, and get an overarching view of a strategy to go forward long term. So with that, first, I just want to talk about something recently that's going on. There's the schools are a priority, obviously, and even though it's distinct and it's separate, we're an overarching. They're under our umbrella, and so they're going to look for a levy. And all I know is what the superintendent told me. I have no inside information. They're going to present some information. They're still refining their strategy, but it looks like they're looking to build a primary and a middle school on campus. And it'll be on our property, the property we own, where the soccer fields are. And so that's really all I know. They said as they refine their strategy, they'll bring myself and council into the loop, because obviously they need as much support they can garner in order to achieve their goal of new schools. So that's all I know, but I want to make sure that we're all aware of that, because it does bleed into some other opportunities. One of them would be, as Emily was going to talk about, the library, the Cuyahoga County Library. Some of you, I think all of you have been part of the discussion where they want to go newer, or they've got a schedule for later this decade. And what they're looking at is a newer upgraded facility. And so they would like to have it on Brecksville Road, but wherever we can provide land, they would build it. So that's the deal, that we would be part of our responsibility to supply them land. And so one of the things you want to start thinking about is, if you have or can identify any potential sites, that would be great, because there's no clear-cut answer to this. It's just, what's a strategy? And so one of the concepts is one of the things we've thrown out before was to put the library on the nose of that property on Sea League Road, which would be the soccer fields, in between the 2 roads, between the football road and the Fieldhouse Road. And so, and then they would attach that to to their primary school and middle school. And I talked to the chief new school. It'd be at the schools, it would be at the end of that green patch that's elevated a little bit between the two roads, the road that goes to the high school and the road that goes to the field house. They're the two soccer fields. They wanna know if we would be willing or interested in doing something with it's our property. So we would have to do something, transfer some title, just like we've done many times, working back and forth. So I just wanna bring that to your attention, because that would be key, that for them to do this in that location would be to utilize our property. And we could do some trade-off or do something. That mechanism hasn't been created yet, but it is an opportunity. And it's just like strategic planning, we throw it on the wall and see what sticks. There's no judgment, there's no right answer or wrong answer, it is an option. And I talked to the chief because one of the concerns at the Boosters Club fundraiser the other night, in talking to people, some of the people, they were sharing some ideas on a variety of subjects, but one of them related to, they brought it up to me about this potential facility, and this library being at the ceiling side of it, and how could we promote safety? And Chief, you articulated briefly before that how you want to enunciate on that or elaborate just briefly?
It's something we can definitely make sure is safe. The safety of our children is the top priority. What we would want to make sure is, as it's going in, we would help all along the way, make sure there's security access from the library into the primary school, that only select people would be able to have access. And if they're building a new school, we have our SRO office built right there next to any entry points. So we can monitor that strategically to make sure that only the right people are coming into the building. And if the door is left open for a long period of time, an alarm will go off. So we have avenues that we've talked to the school at in the past on their own current property that we could utilize on this one to make sure only the correct people that are allowed to have access.
So I bring it up only because that was one of the challenges that was exposed to me in a conversation. And I said, okay, Chief, what do you think? He said, well, there's definite ways to do this to make sure, to ensure safety. So all it is it's one of 1,000 things to discuss, but I did want to bring that to your attention so that if someone calls you from the schools or if someone asks for a meeting and they want to talk about this, for at least you're exposed to it, and that you're exposed as much as I am. There's no plans, there's nothing other than that one sketch we saw several years ago where they showed the buildings, but it was a school initiative, nothing to do with the city, but just on our property. So they talked about the middle school property, the existing middle school property, saving part of the building, get rid of part of the building, the primary school, get rid of that building. So it's jumped around, but I think this group, the leadership for the schools, is focusing in on something that tangible, that they believe they want to go to the people with. And so I just exposed that to everyone here, because obviously everyone here is going to play a role in that, okay?
I'm visual, Mayor. From your description, I couldn't understand it, since the middle school and elementary school and the library all on the two soccer fields?
Yeah, it would be, the way it would do where we're involved would be the library portion. They would want to be up against the ceiling like they are today. And then primary school, middle school, and then parking is a concern, logistics. But I said, hey, they just asked if, and I guess they exposed the fact that property is one of their focal points. And the property happens to be owned by the city of Independence. So that's why we're engaged in the conversation. And that's where we're at. So as they refine their concept, I'm sure the next step will be to contact us, get a meeting. But I just wanted to expose that to you so that, because it is strategic, it is long-term, the library wants to be in a new building, which would free up, and maybe you want to talk about what it would do, the benefits to you, Emily, in terms of the Civic Center. You want to jump in?
So the library building a new building creates a lot of very interesting opportunities from a community services standpoint. Really where we're lacking from a building perspective is the opportunity for growth, especially for our youth programs that continue to grow year over year. And so with the library building, we envision it as sort of the youth programs building. So and then there's a trickle down effect from that in a very positive way, in my opinion. So if we have that space, we could move our Indie Kids Club, which is our after-school program, from the field house, and our summer camp, idea camp from the field house into that space. Our preschool programs, our Friday night programs can all sort of live in that building. And one of the storage challenges that we have with the supplies that we need to operate these programs, we're going up and down from the garage and the other side of the civic center all the way to the banquet room. So it would allow all of our storage to be on one level. It would free up our team members' time, again, not just from a storage standpoint, but they've got to set up the room, tear it down. And so it's sort of a lot of unnecessary work that we have to be working with right now. And it also opens up the opportunity to utilize the banquet rooms more. For example, for our preschool program, the time that it takes to set up, run 3 preschool programs, we're using one banquet room for like 3.5 days out of the week. And we've had to turn down other room reservations because we simply don't have another place to operate the program. So we have a dedicated youth space. It opens up those banquet rooms for more opportunities for residents to run the spaces for whatever they might see fit, so we don't have to turn away people. The other piece that I think is also interesting, which is as a revenue generating standpoint for the city as well. And so just again, it opens up a lot of possibilities. And then when we talk about staffing, right now during the summer, we've got a full-time summer program at the field house that we may have to make sure that we staff with the appropriate number of counselors. We have a part-time program they're running out of the civic center. But we could bring those 2 programs into one space and essentially create one program that has part-time and full-time care for children. We can actually reduce the number of counselors that we're hiring because we're in one space. We don't have to split our resources across 2 different locations. So I think it just, like I said, opens up a lot of really interesting possibilities. Obviously with the banquet rooms being available, more revenue generating opportunity, opportunity to make sure we have our quality staff, but not sort of overstaffing in the sense that we have to do right now, having 2 different locations. And then from an efficiency and effectiveness standpoint, that's another really great opportunity as well. And just thinking about things like when we have summer playground or idea camp drop off for programs, we're taking over the parking lot. Anyone who's had kids in the program knows that when we're dropping off the corner of the building, we've had traffic wrap all the way around the building out to the corner of Captain Lane and Sealy, but now we could have our own entrance to the youth programs building. So just little things like that, again, that have a trickle-down effect as well. If we're at the field house, that opens up another opportunity for the shared use facility for the schools or parks and recreation to use those spaces in another way. So it's just, again, the trickle-down effect and the opportunities are really endless for the city taking over that existing library space.
So again, some of this is gonna segue into another discussion because we're talking about the Civic Center now, and we're talking about, Director Walchanowicz has shared for several years now his vision for that facility. And Tommy, maybe you wanna take a few minutes and go over your vision, the various items that you've talked to council in the past, and maybe just, again, reinforce your concern and your conviction on this.
Right, so at the Civic Center, I guess to put this in perspective, the Elmwood Rec was built in 1961. So 30 years later, 1991, we built the Civic Center. So that was 30 years. So now we're here in 2025, which is almost, next year's gonna be 35 years. And we really haven't done any major upgrades to that building. It's a great building, very functional, but there's so many more things we could be doing. The expanded pool, if you go to most other, the more modern pools now, the indoor pools, they got kids' activities, zero entry for the seniors. There's just so many more things now within the 35 years since that place was built that there are now. The big next thing that we talked about was the canopy over the drop-off entrance, which again is long overdue. And then if we would do that, we would add a more space in the weight room upstairs. So those are the two major things that would cost a good amount. And then the third thing would be if the building was built to enclose the rotunda, the outside rotunda, and we would be able to add a lot of things between community service and rec also.
If we dome that, right?
If we dome that inside, yeah, which again, the building was built with that future plan. So that's what we're looking at.
So what else do you need in terms of your property, in terms of what do you see in terms of the recreation department? Not just the facilities, but what are your concerns going forward?
Well, just the space. The space is the big thing, the space to do more things. There's more. We were approached by a lady in town that does our gymnastics and our cheerleading classes. And this is almost like a year-round thing now. There's 90 kids involved, and we're constantly setting up and breaking down things at the Elmwood Rec building. We have them at the field house, the same thing. We had to move their mats over there. So if we had another multi-purpose room is what I want to call it, where we could have them in there and then have all their mats stored there, and we can use this also for other programs.
You mean at the end of the field house?
So we're looking at the field house possibly for that, yes.
Because there were no bathrooms at the far end of the field house. That's a big facility. And so for years now, people have asked us about bathroom, restrooms, and storage area at the far southern portion, east side of that facility.
Correct.
As being another, something that needs to be addressed, at least long term. Is that?
Correct. So we were looking at a multi-purpose room off on the west side of the field house and then restrooms on the south side of the field house.
So this where would this multi-room go? Where are you looking at?
It would be an addition on the west side of the field house.
Oh, addition, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you could expand that at the south side of that facility. I think there's infrastructure that already built in, Dave, is some of the underground utilities.
Yes, the meeting rooms, we're attached to that. If you want to go on the west side, yeah, it kicks out there and you go all the way south to the end of the building if you wanted to.
So there's opportunities as well.
Yes.
And the purpose today is just to expose some of these things to council so that they're in the queue, so to speak. And then there's the other elements of the land, any land around the park that we put our hands on. I think that's important because future generations, we have the Civic Center today because previous generations acquired the property, the Troya property, additional property in that area. And working with the schools, we were able to create a master plan at the time. And so that allowed us to be able to build the Civic Center on property that we already had. So any vacant property that becomes available, I think it's important before we let anything else get built that the city try to acquire that property. We don't take houses, but if somebody had raw property they wanted to get rid of or we needed, I think that's something we have to seriously consider. Talk about your people and a couple of the responses we got from council were concerned about right sizing and future and what are you doing to make sure that your workforce is sustainable and we're able to provide the level of services?
Yes, so right now, one of my points here under my Parks and Rec was that a lot of the things that we have now were built in the 90s. But these facilities and infrastructure that we have are kind of getting dated. We've been doing a lot of upgrades, in Dave's department and our department, like right now we're working on putting tile in the bocce court restrooms. Last fall, Dave had the flooring done, had a new floor put in. A lot of our facilities that we have out there now in the park need constant upgrades. And we're trying to do as much of this in-house as possible. And as far as manpower goes, Mayor, we're trying to hire people that have some skills. Like we just did a nice cement pathway where the sidewalk used to just dump into that Elmwood Rec parking lot. Now people could stay on that sidewalk we built the curb. We were able to do all that in-house because we got some skilled guys. So your point, my point is that we're trying to constantly look for skilled people to put on our staff to can do some of this versus having outside contractors do the work, because we can just save a lot of money.
Thank you. Anything else you wanna add right now? We may jump back and forth, by the way, but go ahead.
Right, campus security, again, that's our top priority. Cameras, you'll be seeing, I think it's not on this council agenda, but next council agenda, Jim Gibbs will be having something on to continue our campus cameras. That's gonna be the next phase. And then another one is just having better security points in our buildings. I know, Jim, you were on the community service board with Kathleen, we talked about many times just having more control there. Because right now, people can just walk freely from one side to the other. And we did have a little small incident last week with somebody that was in a meeting room. They just walked over to the other side, didn't really know which restroom to go in. So we're looking at tighter access to both the field house and the civic center. So, let's see what else we got. Then the last thing I want to talk about is, right now we're looking at landscape architects for the public square property. That property is just, it hasn't really been improved lately. The landscaping's getting dated, the grass is terrible. I know we talked about a sprinkler system up there. The monument needs a lot of work. Dave and I have been working together trying to get some improvements. It just needs a lot of work up there. So we're starting with a landscape architect to come in, and actually Jim has met us a couple times up there with the
Memorial. That's a priority.
Memorial. So again, it goes back to our infrastructure, just we need to keep improving our properties.
You got some dead trees, you got
Clean up.
posts that need to be,
Lighting, it needs to be.
But it needs a retooling, it needs a facelift, and I know the people have been spending money, the neighbors have been spending money on houses in the area, so I think it complements, let them know that we're good neighbors too in that respect, so you're putting that together so we can present it to public buildings and lands?
Correct. We get three prices.
Okay, good.
Tom, what is it's a brick structure on the east side? What is that?
so it was a well that was donated.
Is that an old fountain or something?
It was an old fountain that was donated many years ago by a family from Independence. It's not currently working.
Correct, yeah.
Did it ever work? Did it had water to it?
It's got,
I believe it worked at one time.
We're gonna revitalize it, it's gonna be drinking water.
Somebody actually built it.
It's gonna be our wishing well.
Very nice, I mean, it was nice.
You know, if you don't mind, I'm gonna deviate, Ron, since we're talking about the park and recreation, we segue over to the service department and different items that you're facing and challenges you're facing. And maybe you could present to council and myself some of the different elements of how you look to the future and what you see as a priority in terms of how we're gonna be able to deliver enhanced services for the future. So we do have a couple of items, I know that are capital items that you want to talk about them, but this is more of a,
Well, the equipment is getting more computerized and sophisticated, so we need to start increasing our employee training programs. We need to hire more sophisticated employees who are able to run the equipment and manage the software programs. Our current facility is not going to be capable to increase with technology. For example, the salt, we should be able to back up to the salt dome and push a button and have it convey right into the truck. Instead of having to get out, get into a loader, load yourself off, get out of the loader, get back in the truck and get on the road. Mechanics, they're gonna need Bluetooth lifts for the vehicles instead of manual push buttons. We need more room. We have millions of dollars of equipment and we just store it outside and it's rusting and rotting. A touchless wash bay where the employees can just drive through and the vehicles can be washed in 5 or 6 minutes instead of 3 or 4 guys. They can, 4 to 5 hours to wash a vehicle. I'd like to see the plow trucks have navigation using GIS to give them strategically turn-by-turn directions. so they know how to plow the city in the most economic way possible. Tyler has been a huge success. We completed 6,448 work orders in 2024. And because of Tyler, we were able to track all that stuff. Along with the employee tablets, that has also helped. We've implemented some sewer software programs that's helping engineering and service have access to the exact same data through the GIS systems. We also have GPS tracking on all the vehicles with forward-facing cameras. And we are in the middle of purchasing a software system for the cemetery, which is gonna help digitize all the files and give, and allow residents to access the graves to find their loved ones.
Good, so technology is a priority for you going to the future, is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely, it's huge.
And we all know the challenge with the personnel, trying to get people qualified that want to work. Jim, you had a comment, or?
No, I was just agreeing with you on that.
Okay, technology, it's changing by the day, and if we're not staying on top of it, I'm not saying the trucks are gonna drive themselves for a while, but they will be monitoring the amount of salt they dispose of, where they dispense of it, and then we'll be able to monitor a lot of these different elements more closely because of technology. So, yeah, so thank you for sharing that and some of the challenges you have trying to get enough people that can look to the future and support us for the future. With that, I want to jump back to Jess. Economic development, obviously, that's one of the core elements of everything we do, because without that, without a robust economic development strategy, we can't do, and we can't be as influential as we are with respect to the various people that we report to, whether our business community, whether it be students, future leaders, whether it be other employees, the stability of our economic, our budget, stability for the future in terms of knowing where we're at and where our challenges are, not only internally, but I've always said, by the time, sometimes we waste time internally debating things back and forth, when in fact, the real challenge is on the outside, what our competition is doing on the outside, and what people are trying to take customers away from us, and we try not to take customers away from others. We like to draw on new opportunities coming into the region, although unfortunately, that's just not the way it always works out. But Jess, I'd like you to maybe share your thoughts and plant some seeds for council to be thinking in terms of what's around the corner, or what's the next part of our long-term strategy.
Thank you, Mayor. We spent a lot of time in December with City Council at the last Economic Growth and Development Committee meeting. We brought in Rico Petro and Bryce Sylvester, two executives from Cushman & Wakefield, and really kind of set the stage for looking at our office building market and how we can upgrade that to meet the needs of the future, and really kind of changing the dynamic of some of our incentives. Typically, our incentives right now are definitely more of a business benefit, but if we change that model slightly, where we're incentivizing the building owners to make some upgrades into their buildings, to upgrade Class B and C buildings to possibly A and B buildings. Again, changing a little bit where that carrot is, so that the building owner is just as invested as we are in terms of the quality of tenants that come into those spaces. So that's something that's really on our radar screen. We continue to have conversations with those individuals about how we can structure that program. And hopefully over the next couple of months, we'll be able to share some more details with City Council. But again, it's really changing the dynamic of economic development. The theory too is that if we roll out a program like this, it'll help set us apart from some of our competitor communities like Beechwood and Westlake. Again, so that we are, again, the leader in that area.
I think the council was receptive, at least from the first meeting we had. I got the impression that you were open to trying something different. Is that still fair? Okay.
One of the other things that we're doing is we've heard a lot from our existing businesses that they want to feel more connected to the community. And so to help kind of bridge that gap and really help retain some of those companies, We're launching this year a community expo, and that community expo will happen in May. And again, it's a way to expose local businesses to the broader community and also build a little bit more knowledge with local residents about who our local businesses are. The best way to help support and retain our businesses is by us residents supporting those businesses. So on May 10th, we'll host the first community expo. I thought that this expo would be a great success if we had 25 businesses participating. We've got close to 45 businesses looking to participate in the first expo, and it's a good partnership not only between the city and the schools, because this event will happen at the schools, it'll have school participation, so it really is a community event. Along kind of that business retention side too is also exposing or enhancing knowledge of those local businesses to our residents in the Independence Post, and that's something that we've launched this year too. And a third thing is really looking at how we can partner with our neighbor, the city of Seven Hills. Both the city of Independence and Seven Hills have opportunities for development on their commercial corridor, Rockside Road. We need to be cognizant of how that development happens, as that will impact the city of Independence too. As Seven Hills develops that land, their available land, it will have impact on the city of Independence in terms of its infrastructure.
Can I jump in when you're done?
Yeah.
Only because,
Apparently he's jumping in.
well, only because I had a meeting with the mayor of Seven Hills, and they've got a development that they're just inking now at their, I call ours is the northwest quadrant, theirs is the southwest quadrant of our area, but it's really their northwest or the east quadrant. So they've got, it's a rehabilitation facility, good size, going into some of that property. So what's the significance? Well, we both agree that we need to address the infrastructure. I asked Don to put together the existing infrastructure on Rockside Road west of 77, the impact it'll have on Seven Hills. We got sanitary, storm, we take everything going this way. Utilities are becoming a real challenge. CEI is really a challenge for us and everyone else in the future to try to get them to commit to a timetable of installation of major infrastructure. So if you're not ahead of the curve, and we're not talking about a year, a month or two, we're talking about a year potentially or so, to get them to participate in a development strategy. We've got the water department, which is another challenge. Now, will the infrastructure survive today? Yes, but it's not sustainable to the future. When you start adding over 100 acres in Independence, the rest of their development, they're gonna have some residential on their side. So we've agreed that myself and Mayor Biassiata, that we're gonna have a sit down after we get organized. We'll be able to show them the infrastructure that's existing and what we have to do to ensure quality of traffic management and sustainable utilities in that area beyond both developments. So we're gonna put that together. We've also talked about, he's very open to letting us tie into Lombardo Center, which there's a 10-foot strip right now, or 5-foot strip, the double strip. He has no qualms about letting us tie in wherever we wanna do tie-ins. He'd ask for some concession or some consideration on the pavement upgrade, because Lombardo is shot from a physical standpoint. But so, we'll have a meeting next Tuesday to talk about the Northwest Quadrant more in detail, our side, but I just wanna make sure you're aware of the fact that we're working with Seven Hills to do something that is good for everybody. And we don't wanna compete for the same customer. We want to make sure that the infrastructure is designed and built that'll have a sustainable strategy in mind beyond these two developments. So, thank you, Jess.
Thanks, Mayor. The next component was wayfinding. We talked about investing in the wayfinding on city campus, but also on the Rockside Road corridor. We talked about those gateway enhancements. What is the experience that somebody has when they get off I-77? They're entering in a premier community, and we need to upgrade that experience going forward.
We talked about updating the city's zoning code. As many of you know, the zoning code was largely written in the 1960s. There's been some modifications to it over time. We really need to spend some time strategically looking at that zoning code and how it can help us improve investment going forward. And then the final thing is talking about leadership development. And I know this might sound something interesting to put under the economic development heading, but as we look at developing the next generation of leaders as well from a community standpoint, but also as a retention tool, if you become engaged in the community where you work, you live, you're more likely to stay there and grow. A lot of communities have been using leadership development as an economic development strategy, and it's something that we would like to do here to not only from the standpoint, again, of retaining top talent here in our community, but also growing the next generation of leaders here in the city of Independence.
Jess and her team have done a really nice job of interacting with the schools. We probably had more of a robust discussion with the schools the last four or 5 years than we have in the last couple decades. We've always had a good relationship, but there's always been that, us and them. And I think with Jess being on board, she's really built that bridge of communication with the schools to the extent now that we're looking at how we can incentivize some of the students today to be part of our infrastructure, be part of the cities it's a great job, it's a great career, it's a great opportunity. And so between the vocational school and the high school and even going into the middle school, if we can get someone's attention and get them to be excited about what we do, it's only gonna help us for future generations. And if we can keep our own, and look, if you go back 30, 40 years, most of the people had worked for the city at one time or another. You grew up here, you had a job, you had a part-time job for the city in one way, shape, or form. And so the thought is, hey, if we can get you there, there's a chance now, if we're really good, that we can keep you. If we have the right technology, if we show you that you're incentive, you can grow with us. So the whole thing with all the departments is that we want to make sure that everyone has a chance to grow for the future, and that we're incentivizing our young students to be able to participate in that level. And so if we catch a couple of them at a time, it's a win-win for everybody. Because it was said earlier, if you take care of your own community, if you live here and work here, you're gonna take care of your own community. So it works out for everyone's best interest. So every department is aware of the strategy, and everybody wants to hang on Jess to participate in that. So we may do our own participate in career days, we may participate in some other venues that allow us to be exposed to future leaders, future students, future employees to help us. So thank you. That's an overall strategy for all our employees. Okay, thank you. Anything else you want to add?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. So we talked, and just to clarify, we need to make sure that people, when they get off the exits, when they drive through Independence, when they have it's an experience. And you've all driven to other communities where you get off the exit, it's kind of a wow factor because it's well manicured, it's landscape, it's well lit, it's safe, and we've made progress. But we've got a long way to go, and so it's not cheap. But you remember, I remember Rock Hill when I'm on 77 going south. I remember the clock tower. You just don't forget certain things. So, but I think some of the more sophisticated communities do put money aside for some of these venues. And so it's something that I think that the city of Independence, especially since we have two interstates right here, it's a good start for us to do something to enhance. And I know the business community, we talk to them, and just, there's not a week goes by that they're not talking about potential opportunities for us to do things that enhance their ability to draw and retain people. So it's just, it's important for us to look at it in that venue.
And Mayor, with respect to that, when we had that economic development meeting and we had the people who are selling Independence for us, really, in addition to Jessica, they said that was key.
Yeah.
Aesthetics really did mean something to them. When you get off at our exits, whether it be Pleasant Valley or Rockside Road, we talk about Rockside, but obviously Pleasant Valley is crucial to us too. some wow factor, but something that makes you proud to be an independent or differentiates yourself from everywhere else. I mean, when you're competing against Pittsburgh, Detroit, Columbus, and now you got Cleveland area here, there's gotta be something that is different for us. So I think we've got the tools to do those types of things, and I would agree that is something that seems like wow, you're gonna put a lot of money in for what, but people wanna be proud of where they work, because they can work out of their homes here. They don't have to work anywhere in an office building, and we're an office building community, so we made that investment in the 60s, and I think we gotta keep it up.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Let's go, Chief. You wanna talk about, police department,
Yeah, absolutely.
our favorite subject?
My favorite one, absolutely. So I've been talking
You
about
wanna
this.
talk about all the challenges you're having today, or no, you're not gonna talk about it?
No, it's been a busy day.
You look busy.
Yes, we've been doing a lot. Since 2021, I've been talking about this. I do believe we should be looking into building a new structure for the police department. Many communities throughout Northeast Ohio have been making this investment because of the fact that technology continues to grow for law enforcement. The need for safety is a pinnacle to every community. This building is over 40 years old. I have butted heads with our IT department multiple times. We're basically just trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound here. This structure cannot hold, one, the capacity of the officers that we have, and two, keep up with the technological improvements that we keep trying to do. From the cameras, from needing more room for screens, to the fact that in the future, a lot of communities are investing in more drones that will respond before police and fire departments do to get to analyze a scene before they show up, to relay information before we show up to it. This is the technology that's coming. This facility is not there. Not only that, but our parking lot is extremely exposed from where we're at. We've had the bank robbery car that we seized sitting there, where criminals that are connected to it can see that. If we really got into a situation where we're not around here, they could come back and take their car back. We have an unprotected parking lot. There's a lot of holes here for the station, and the last thing I'm gonna say is 40 years ago, we had about 19 officers when we were first put into this building. We're at 38. 38 is what I said when I came here in 2021. I asked to expand that. I believe we can work with that. Obviously, 40 years ago, Rockside Road looked tremendously different. The need for safety, the expansion of the department is very important. Our call volume is reflecting the need to have that many officers. We have our sergeants and lieutenants changing in their offices. We had to move the lockers into their office because our locker room is not large enough. The space is not there. We do not have an interview room to interview suspects. I'm doing everything I can since I've been here. We combine rooms. We have multiple use spaces. Anytime I've invited you over there, I bring you over. I tell you this room is done for this, and this, multiple things. So we have guys on top of each other. They're doing good work. I believe a new building is the right step in the right direction for this department.
Any questions for the chief? Technology, the future?
Training, obviously our training requirements, we do what we can. We use Emily quite a bit. We use the space over there. We use buildings before they get torn down. Whatever we can use. Newer modern facilities have robust training areas. They have ranges that can be used for the weapons that we use, and and be allowed to increase the technology as the needs change. I'm gonna say out of all the departments, the technology for police work has radically changed in 40 years. Every year something new, the laws keep changing, what we use keep changing, what the expectations of the community is, and how we de-escalate situations. If we need to become more robust as first responders to medical situations, what we bring as police or have in our cars constantly changes. The facility needs to change, at least every 40 to 50 years to keep up with the changing times.
So the chief has a vision for the future that obviously is beyond today, because it's like the tasers, the simple thing, right? No, not so simple. Explain maybe for public.
Well, one, we didn't carry tasers even 15 years ago. Like, my department didn't have them. Then we get new tasers. We have to outfit that. Now the new tasers need to be wired into the walls to automatically upload into the computer systems. This is standard. We are not doing anything that's above and beyond, but the technology keeps changing. Even our radios, right now we have the base version radios. they want the radios now that automatically upload into your servers. IT is pulling their hair out with what what we need to be doing, which is standard for most departments. So when you look at cities like Middleburg Heights, North Ridgeville, it's just the ones off the top of my head that are building brand new police stations, there's a reason why they're doing that. The needs and requirements keep changing. We are grandfathered in a lot of times, like our jail, we're grandfathered in. So the state says, is it right? No, but you're grandfathered in, so we're not gonna push it. This leaves us in a gray area for some of our liability. So we make it work for what it is, but if there's an opportunity to meet the current moment, I think that we have to start planning to get there at some point.
I think what the chief mentioned earlier was, we use the Civic Center for a variety of, it's a meeting places for, we're really such, because of our central location and Emily's accommodating, various departments that can use I know the mayor's meeting, we have that over there for the regional mayor's meeting. Why? Because it's easy, it's right here. And they really do appreciate it. I know the chief and the different law enforcement agencies, you accommodate as many as you can between you and the fire department.
Yes, and then we do have a shared use area here in the front of our station. I just want to state that that is a safety concern. You know, it's a safety concern for this side of the building, not to freak anybody out here. Like even today, we had a guy that was losing his mind over there. He was very angry, he was screaming, he was shouting. Obviously, I'm getting phone calls from people on the other side, like, is it safe? Sharing open space where our residents and community is just trying to come in, when we have a jail here that we're trying to access people that we have nowhere to put them. We have a reports room, we got the front window. If the argument, the fight's gonna happen, it's gonna happen at the bell.
Judy, you had a question?
Just a quick question for you. As you say, looking ahead, we're a business hub. What about cyber? I would imagine you'd need server space and maybe some cyber officers in the future, because the cyber crimes that are committed against our businesses are not insignificant. Is that something that you're thinking about?
No, I mean, computer technology is something massive that we want to do more of. We are currently in talks with the DEA to potentially have an officer learn more about the dark web. You know, it's gonna get there. The dark web, which is extremely important because that's how they're getting the fentanyl transactions. So we are trying to do that, but we're stuck in how much space that we have. So anytime we try to add a computer even, where are we adding that computer? There's no more room for where we're sticking these things. And when you're talking about cybercrime, dark web, you're talking about not only servers, but very expensive computers with multiple screens that need space. And I have done everything that I can to make the space work that we have. It's not about tearing down walls, it's not expanding. Can't expand into the parking lot. There's nowhere for the cars to go, and the cars are completely exposed, as I said before. It's about having a space that's robust enough to grow with the times, at least for the next 40 years. And using what we have, you know, we'll leave it for the next tenants of that space to be ready to use for good office space or whatever the mayor deems. But our space it's really hit its top. It's hit its lid.
The reason I ask is because when I was director of the State Board of Cosmetology, we got hit. And the FBI, we called the FBI and they said, well, you gotta call your local police.
Yeah, we investigate those.
Yeah.
You'll see it when I send you guys the reports on fraud usage and everything like that. We get hit quite a bit, not only the businesses, but our residents. Honestly, we keep our residents very, very safe, but fraud is one of the top ones that affects them. And our elderly, you gotta think of them of anyone else. They are the prime targets and the victims of that.
And we try to, you see on the newsletter how we communicate that message back to our senior population. We're always trying to educate them, bringing them in so we can teach them, be part of a solution rather than part of the problem. And we've been fortunate to catch a couple that way because we educated our people. But there are still the ones that slip through the cracks, and we're trying to communicate. And so it's just an ongoing evolution.
Look what happened at Cleveland Municipal Court. They were shut down for what, a week, 10 days? Cleveland City Hall for 5 days.
Yeah, so we're trying to constantly evolve that. And Chief alluded to, we would retool and repurpose that side of them if in fact it can. There's plenty of different opportunities, but it's premature to even discuss that other than look at a blueprint and see what kind of space you have, because we're not there yet. But that's the long term, that's over the horizon, but we know it's there. So that's what we'll do. We want monitoring, seeing how we can repurpose, retool some of this space to be more efficient down the road.
And we brought in a company to evaluate the space and everything like that. They echo these same sentiments. Last point, I will state that, you know, obviously our sergeants, lieutenants changing in their office is working out fine right now because they're all men. We have amazing females that work for our department. If they get promoted, we're in a new pickle here. Like, this is, we have to change based on the times. We are really on top of each other over there with what we are trying to put together.
We talked about, I think, Dave, we bid out the security for City Hall,
Yep, coming in the 21st.
21st?
Extended it because it's complicated.
Yeah,
Pretty complicated, so we had a lot of questions. And Dennis and I decided to extend it bit by two. It will be open the 21st.
so after that time, we'll call it Public Buildings and Lands. If you got something that's, you think is something we need to take advantage of, then we'll bring it to Public Buildings and Lands, is that?
So the bids will be open if you can discuss it at that time.
Well, you want to expedite it because we're.
If we want to expedite it, we have to get it done.
Right.
It's been going on since early 2000s, Mayor.
We have the money.
20-some years now. We've been talking about City Hall.
Dave assures us we're
Yeah,
gonna
last
have
year I assured you. And then we ran into a little bit of money, but Vern found some.
Okay.
He opened up a drawer, he found about 500,000 just laying there.
File settlement, it's still around.
500,000, sure.
$500,000.
The point being is that this is something council talked about, they've authorized, and we're moving forward with it. And so we should have some indication, it'll be interesting to see the timetable they have part of their bid, how many days to execute a construction contract. So I'll be interested to see that, because the other thing that I'm experiencing in the private sector is these timetables for projects are now what used to be 3 months, 6 months, what used to be years, 2 years. It's just
Early
like,
6 months.
it's like, it's just the way, the new normal. So, okay, so we're part of that, you're on it, I just wanna make sure this is consistent with what council authorized us to get that security done at City Hall. So that addresses the issue that the chief brought up about being secure on this side of the City Hall.
Yeah.
Unless you have a question about the station, I can talk with Steve, with you guys about the 77 entry ramp. That way I can just sit down, you won't have to hear my voice again.
I did have one question. You referenced the architectural study that the city had retained. Did we ever see the complete results of that? It was done for the police department and the service
I
department.
think, didn't he make a presentation, the architect make a presentation?
Was that the $400 million?
But it wasn't prime.
Prime made a presentation.
I don't think there was any
Council.
definitive, I thought there was more work to be done, if I remember.
Yeah, I have to,
I think there was additional
Circle.
feedback, but,
It was like, yeah, let's go back and look at this,
Yeah.
and this before we go to the
Exactly.
next level. I think it goes back to,
Feedback was.
if I remember,
that wouldn't
was,
work.
let's go back to do a full cost benefit analysis of a new police station versus renovation. And I know you said, here's what it is, but I don't believe there was anything,
yeah, I think you're
wasn't-
right.
it wasn't fully documented, the costs to say, here would be the renovation, I believe, versus X of a new building.
Well, I think what he did say is that renovation won't do it on this footprint. But what he did say is he didn't do the summary of the total cost, you're right. So I'll find out about where it's at with that.
Yeah, he pretty much definitively said that the land here, that would not function as.
Well, I agree with that.
That's-
Well, I mean, if you wanted to build a garage, a store,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and that's where it was always, it's all necessary, and that was going.
Right.
Right, that's why I think it was left at, was do we really need that or no? They were suggesting too, but I think there was some more work to be done. If I remember correctly, they were to come back to us, I believe, that group was.
Can I move on to the 77 ramp thing and then I'll segue to Steve, is that okay, Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
I support the 77 emergency ramp at Sea Lake. Obviously, our police station is here. We do keep cars on Rockside all the time. We always keep cars on Rockside Road in constant patrol for immediate access. For major calls, if our cars are spread out, the fastest avenue is Brexville Road. Today, I was in a car, we had to race down Brexville Road at a high speed to respond to Granger Road for a active disturbance that was going on with an out-of-control male. I believe running through the center of town is potentially unsafe. We have a lot of our business community there. People are crossing the street. We have an ice cream place there with kids that are actively around. Having that ramp not only speeds up our response to the areas that cause the most crime for us, but it keeps us out of the center of town where we have to speed and get around cars in a narrow spot. I would just like to, that's really about it for me there. We jump on, we've had officers responding to hotels, multiple floors, they're calling for help. The only way that we can get there at this point is Brexville Road and around. So to get to Ramada, to get to extended stay, it's a travel from here. Our jail is here. Officers are going to be here regardless. To back up with the other officers, that ramp would save precious minutes and allow officers to potentially either save lives or protect themselves from having to use force that they don't want to use because they're outnumbered.
Well, we're doing the logistics now to see if everything's gonna work, so
Yeah, just throwing on my scoreboard.
we'll continue to work on that one.
Pictures.
Yeah, just to echo his comments about the ramp. We were up on the freeway quite a bit, and getting onto the freeway without having to run down 21 to Rockside and get on, it would be a lot much better situation. In order for us to get to Rockside, to get to the interchanges, to where those accidents are occurring on the freeway, we are actively going through that study now and looking at what our times would be and how they'd be improved. So, but that is something I believe that would be a definite welcome change. As far as the fire department goes, believe it or not, the fire department's 30 years old this year. It is a 24/7 facility. There are people there around the clock living there, and it's been subjected to that type of activity for the last 30 years. We have done our part to do cosmetic upgrades here and there to keep things, working for us. We've redone the kitchen, I think it was 21, 2021. We've improved some of the decor inside as far as wall coverings, things like that. But at this time, in evaluating, where we're at on the dorm side of the building, it just doesn't meet the current standards as far as people staying in one big room with only, partitions there, and it's not complete separation. Coming through COVID, showed that, we're gonna basically have those, transmit things to everybody in that room. So nowadays, if you look at this, and we went through this with an architect, and they designed what would be a proper National Fire Protection Association standard for dorms. They generated that, so what that would entail is an addition onto the side of the building, on the east side of the building. Along with that, that would improve the size of our fitness room, which is another current goal for the NFPA, is to make sure that firefighters have adequate fitness and facility to do that. So that would increase the size of that, as well as storage. We really don't have storage other than on the second floor of the building, and really no storage on that side of the building on the first floor. So that would improve that as well. So looking into the future, as we look at the needs of that building and how it fits what we're going to be doing, we're trying to identify that moving forward, that these changes will help improve that building in the next 20 to 30 years. It also would improve the air handling on that side. We're currently maxed out with what it's putting out, so this would separate that, improve the airflow environment in each area where the firefighters are staying. Any questions on that?
Did you come up, when I think you got a rough number on those costs?
Yeah, current number, if we would have done it this year, would be about $2 million. Next year, with the increases, it'd be about 2.5 million. On that. The nice thing about it is we've been saving a little bit of money, because we were gonna do, like, to coin a phrase from Chief Butler here, putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. We were looking at making some cosmetic changes inside, and we realized it wasn't gonna fit the needs moving forward, so we were throwing money at it that really wasn't necessary, but we were saving money to the tune of about $400,000 right now for the dorm renovations. And also, we've been saving money for changing out the current roof system, which is 30 years old. So we can combine those two projects into one, where if we do the addition, re-roof the whole building, that's what's included in that. For, say, 26, it would be 2.5 million. So,
I was not here when you showed the plan.
I can send those to you.
Would you mind, yeah. Can you go up, or what's your vision?
we were gonna go out to the east. Currently, there's 3 parking spots there. They extend out to probably the far side of those 3 parking spots and then over towards the ravine.
Oh, okay.
The only thing in question right now is we have a data line that goes across there somewhere, and we just have to take into account where that's at, the conduit, so.
If you wouldn't mind saying that.
Sure, I can do that.
Would everybody like those, or if you haven't seen them,
We saw them.
I thought we shared them.
We did see that.
We did it at the safety committee meeting, and I think in the, also the finance committee meeting for the 5-year, but we'll.
I think, Vern, you were gonna update some part of the budget, maybe some proposed costs, do you recall on that?
Yeah, I think after we went through this round,
Oh, you're gonna do it after this?
to
Yep, okay.
see if we're adding things or if we're starting to prioritize, and then we could do a revised version that's more realistic.
That's right.
And another smaller project that we're working on right now would be upgrading our sirens activation system. Dave's been diligently working on upgrading the mechanics of these sirens. We have 8 of them across the city. They're activated currently on the 154 megahertz system, which we were all on years ago. But in the past 10 years, everything's been getting upgraded to the 7,800 megahertz public safety band. And as far as I know, most of the cities around us have upgraded it to the 7,800. That is what our dispatch center uses. So their concern is that, we're the only one on the 154, and it does seem to work at times, and other times it doesn't. So looking at the consistency and how their future look at it is to group all these different cities into one computer software program that will do all this automated announcing of a warning, will automatically trigger to go out. That's all done on the 800 megahertz system. So we're looking to probably make this leap and upgrade at this time to get that put in place. And that's about a $60,000 project with the 8 sirens that we have.
I would think it's a priority. Last April, when we had that,
August.
we were all sitting here and the alarm didn't go off.
Yeah, well, currently,
Saturday they went off.
yeah, currently, just so you know, we used to have dispatch in the basement. So when we were still working with CBD, we had a communication line established between here and Brecksville, and it did go through some other convoluted routes. It's a fiber line. That fiber line went down. We just had our test in March. It was a statewide test and it failed, and we realized that line was there for jail patrol, as well as the siren activation. So it would go out, CBD would send it across that line, it would hit the basement here, it would go up to our Radio Shack and send out a signal across all of them. And that's just too many touch points, too many places that could break down, whereas CBD can send a signal right from their dispatch center and hit all those at one time. It just takes a lot of the errors out of the loop, so that's what we're looking to do on that project.
Along with, talk about CBD, we've been in communication with them on Chief Butler. We've done a really nice job of saving us a couple $100,000 a year, to almost $300,000 a year. And so now we're working on who's gonna play in our playground in terms of dispatch going to the future. And so he's working on trying to make sure that from a police and fire standpoint, it works seamlessly for both of them, whether police or fire, and who we team up with in terms of the dispatch, because as he indicated to, I'm sure all of us heard that you get overridden and clouded in terms of some of these conversations, you could be in big trouble. Lose a simple traffic stop gets ahead of a robbery, it's like. So he's working on the next step. And we're still working with CBD on potentially relocation. So Jess is working on that one pretty diligently. So a lot of different balls in the air in terms of every one of these issues has 10 more sub-issues that we're constantly trying to juggle to see if we can attract a new company or deal with an internal issue or save money or be more efficient. So it's a living dynamic that we deal with every day.
Chief, thanks. Do you know, or can you share if the fire department personnel has grown the same rate as police that Chief Butler shared? It's more than doubled in 40 years. Is that Have you seen something
We've
similar?
definitely increased, I mean, we moved into that building, I think we're at 6 personnel per shift, we're now at 8. With 2 guys off at a time, so, but we always, we might have 7, 8 guys at a time, so we're looking at, the dorm capacity and something like that, that's something we take into account.
So personnel grows, but you don't see the need, I guess, to accommodate for future equipment? You don't have, it's easier at police cruisers than new squads.
No, I think we're currently, right now, we're at 3 squads, we're only staffed 2. We get a call back, we could probably grab the 3rd one and go. But right now, we're at a good mix, and I think for our size and the volume we run, I think we're good, and I don't see that changing much into the future,
Thank you.
so.
You see technology changing in terms of the fire department?
I think you're gonna see, closest person there to the scene being dispatched more. In other words, if, Brexville's coming back from a call from Marymount and they get a call on the freeway, I can see them grabbing them and sending them our call, to get there quickly. That kind of thing you're gonna start seeing into the future. It's kind of there, but not totally utilized yet. But this integration of all of the cities, you're probably eventually gonna see that where, if the other city's closer, they're gonna get there quicker. You'll see that kind of thing happen.
What about technology, telemedicine and enhanced,
Yeah, currently at state
expectation?
level, I think they're working on a bill that will allow for expanded role of the paramedic. So right now, we work under the emergency role, that the thing we do is under an emergency situation. So what they're referring to is like, the patient be taken to the hospital, they get discharged home, who's checking on that individual? They want to use paramedics to go out there and do those kind of things. Also, the role in the hospital, you'll probably see paramedics in there a lot more. They do today have them in there, but they would be able to do an expanded role as far as their capability. So that's something that, could be different in the future, as far as what we do.
One more question. You mentioned studying response times with the inclusion of a emergency access ramp on CLID. Does that mean we're gonna have some idea on like utilization estimates of some kind of look back of we think we will utilize it X amount of
Well, I can
times?
tell you, we probably almost daily getting up there, if anything, multiple times a day for access. And with this expanded work going on with the freeway work, we're up there all the time. So,
Yeah, I guess I don't think about that too. At first, it's like to get to Rockside, but you're answering calls on the highway anyway. I mean, there's an accident on the highway, that's how you're getting.
we don't always have an identified location, we get a ballpark area. So, police accessing to try to get there first, getting there to figure out where it's at. We try to use cameras from Crown Center, any of the technology we can to try to idea where that's at. But, if we go the wrong direction because they get bad information, it's just longer to get around. So to get on that ramp sooner is just a quicker route to get there, so.
And this ramp would go north.
What's that?
The ramp would go north.
So we just go north.
So if it's somewhere between Sprite and Rockside, that does you no good going north. You'd have to go back to
No, it would
Wallings
be
again.
business as usual on how we would
Yeah.
access that, but we also have agreements with Rocky
Oh,
Heights.
yeah.
Rocky Heights with access from Wallings, but right now with some construction going on, that's limited, so.
Okay, actually, your point's well taken. If it was on southbound, somewhere in Pleasant Valley, somewhere between Rockside and Pleasant Valley, you could probably get down there faster, get back on faster than.
Yeah, we could flip
Something
some,
southbound, northbound,
Yeah.
you can't.
Yeah.
but by far most of our actions up on the
North of
interchange,
Thank you.
Anything else for Chief Rega? Okay, and Dave, you're kind of like off the hook a little bit today because it's your birthday, right? Thank you. We won't sing to you, but we will acknowledge it.
He's gotta work today.
Well, what do you mean, Levy's gotta work? Of course he's gotta work.
I mean, as far as strategic planning, Mayor,
Go ahead and talk about it.
you know what, most of it has to do with everything that we talked about in the buildings. And of course, tech service, we went to police and we did some of the rooms there, just the same way we did at City Hall here. We're able to remodel, but you're right, we can't expand anything.
We just retool some stuff.
We retool them and we
That's
take care of them.
basically
Fresh them up and make them look a lot better.
Well, it's a constant.
But, we make the best of the buildings right now to keep them comfortable and, try and, the LED lighting we upgrade all the time. These lights here, these lights probably about 8, 9 years ago now. I don't think we changed any of these, if we did, maybe a couple fixtures. When we would be changing bulbs every couple, 3-4 months, so the LED upgrades to the campus has been really successful and saved quite a bit of money. Civic Center, and we're still doing some parking lots. Some of the bulbs we don't upgrade, like the tennis courts, because they aren't that often, and that tennis court, you know, it's really a good system. It's a Musco system, the fixtures are good, everything's solid, so, you know, the savings, we take account of the savings, a year's payback. So, but tech services on top of everything, you know, we get calls every day, and as far as there to right technology changes, and I'm telling you, it is tough to get guys, people, ladies, it's tough to get employees that are very, very, you know, they know their trade. And if you do want them, you're gonna pay a big buck.
Yeah,
I have some people that I interviewed, and, you know, they make a lot of money. Tradesmen make a lot of money today. I mean, it's nothing for a guy to make $150,000 a year. I mean, he's gotta work some overtime, he or she. That's how much they'll make, so it's competitive. You know, it's very competitive outside. So we get, like Tommy says, we hire the people. In fact, we got a guy coming in and we gotta bring him in at a lower wage, but we want hard workers and we want thinkers though too. It's one thing to work hard, but to work, you know, efficient, intelligent, and just, you know, use your head. You know, don't make dumb moves and don't get hurt. So all those come into account when you're hiring somebody, and it really is a tough time, believe it or not. I think the trade schools and the mayor touched on the vocational schools. We have young students that come over, they shadow with our department. We have them working with us. You know, we love that, it's great. It's a great opportunity to work and learn something when they work in the city. And Tommy does that all the time with the kids, you know. And you teach them and they go from there. It's good for both of us, both the city and the individual that we're helping.
You know, one of the chief, I just want to make sure that with the expansion for the fire department, that's going to accommodate men and women, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Men and women.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, because, you know, I know some of the paramedics and rescue people for Cleveland, they're really efficient and really good. So we'll be prepared for that. Can't let the police department have all the good, smart people. Okay. With that, we'll segue into Don Ram and engineering. And, you know, Don's not last for a reason. He's last because he has a lot to share. But we sometimes forget about all the other demands for money, demands for resources because of infrastructure, whether it be street or sewer or water line. And we have to make sure that the items already talked about are a priority, as much of a priority as a street or a sanitary sewer or a storm sewer or utility. So Don, why don't you just take it away.
Sure, Mayor, thank you.
Talk about your vision for the future.
Yeah, a couple of big points I wanted to touch base on here today is things that you've heard before and things that are getting any less important with every passing day is to be more systematic and effective with our maintenance of our sewer systems is a big priority. I think we can be more strategic. And the challenge, of course, with those systems is that we don't have paying customers. We don't invoice for those systems, so there's not necessarily a dedicated revenue stream, so everything comes out of the general fund, and so we're limited somewhat in the amount of funding that we can allocate towards that. But we can still, knowing that we've been double teaming the management of these systems between vendors that the engineering department manages with CMK and survey contracts with service departments, men and equipment. And I think our goal would be to strategize and develop a strategy where we can just be really effective with we want to make better use of the funding that's been given to us. It's not a lot. We looked at the United survey and CMK is about $275,000. And we want to burn through that. We want to get these vendors out, being proactive and systematically televise and just get footage and get on as many streets as possible, burn through the money so that we can kind of have a metric of how many feet per dollar it costs us so that we can then inform council and look at really if the funding's adequate. Because I know we've had plans for 5-year cycles to get through in a 5-year period. It seems like a nice goal, but once we bring that metric back, we'll have a better feel for what that actually costs to do that, both storm and sanitary.
But that information is our information. As they camera, as they identify different issues, I'm assuming that everything that they do is part of our GIS, it's part of our bank of information that we're establishing.
Yeah, the data's right, paid for by us, we get it.
Just want to make sure
maintained.
everybody's,
It's given to us on jump drives and, electronically, and for sure, we're trying to work with Jim Gibbs and Geocentric and to have technology that allows for better management of that data, because it's voluminous. And the goal, of course, is to, while they're televising, and if they're between manholes that are GPS and assets in a GIS system, that the data, the televising, and the reports that are generated from any run of sewer can be instantaneously, uploaded into the GIS system so that it's there. Because the challenge is for us is knowing what you televised when and what year you did it, what was the condition. So it was funneling through a lot of reports and old-fashioned hard copies and stuff. So the technology is there. We're trying to get there. That just in general too with our whole GIS system. So maybe you mentioned about our northwest quadrant, Seven Hills, opposite quadrant. So right now, we do have a GIS system. We did have sewers and water mains, GPS and put in by CT a number of years ago. So that would be the ideal system, to just upload and pull up a screen and see all those utilities in that area, the capacities and diameters and conditions of those utilities. Now, they're not going to have CEI and Dominion, because those are proprietary, but at least for our own stuff. So we're not quite there yet. We're going to still do it a lot of the old-fashioned way, pulling different plans and different streets. But so the GIS is a general overarching strategy, which we're all working towards. But I think with the sewer maintenance, that would definitely be our goal. So that once we get back to council, the numbers, the metrics of what it will take, I think we can be more prudent to give you real dollar values, and then we can set what maybe a more realistic cycle might be. Because if 5 years costs us a lot of money, then maybe we have to back off and make it a 10-year or 15-year, but at least we'll know. And or in lieu of hiring a separate standalone division of sewer crew that's got men and manpower dedicated to do nothing else, because that's really the challenge with both departments. This is filler work, so we're doing a lot of things that are top priorities, and the sewers are easy to ignore because they're underground, out of sight, out of mind, but for some challenge things that come up, and we're responding to them with backups and breakages, things of that nature. So it's kind of the way it is because of how easy it is to kind of to not prioritize it, but we know we got to get better, and so that's a goal for us.
So you'll be able to, when you're done, I mean, at least at this phase, you should be able to give us good information so that we can determine and refine our approach to creating or enhancing our sewer department by equipment, manpower, technology, and it'll be based on some data rather than just, we think it's in our best interest.
Yeah, year in and year out, we just kind of get by, so to speak, and we do the best we can. I think we're still up on it, and we have good systems. I think they're functional, and I think they're self-cleaning. They're meant to be, they're designed to be. So, but for some things that you come across when you televise, a couple instances we brought to the Utilities Committee just last month about the point repairs that were made, and that's a perfect example. Now, whether or not I can tell you that the GIS system has those locations specifically noted and those repairs on what date and what was done and how much it cost, that I'm certain that isn't the case, but that would be a goal to get there so that so the system is as current and accurate as it should be. So the next thing kind of segues right into the other structure as a whole. Our goal, I know we make best use of our 5-year capital plan, And aside from the fact that there's always more projects than there is funds, and that's kind of a general statement to be said for all the years I've been here. And I don't think that's gonna change either, but I know that there's a desire from council, I've been asked the question numerous times, show us how these are prioritized and why they're the priority of what they're assigned. And I know that inherently the 5-year plan, if we felt that there was a project that was a high priority, it would be more in the 1 or 2 years from now versus something that's out 4 or 5 years. So there's inherently built in the priorities in there, but these projects there's many dynamics that impact all these projects, the customers that are affected, whether or not there's outside funding, whether or not our partners at other government agencies have projects that are locked down and that we have a fixed component of that, so somewhat the timelines are set in stone. Many dynamics, the risk of not doing a project because if something is out there that needs to be done and there's a risk to not do it and what those costs could be. So what I foresee, what I'd really like to do, be more strategic and getting some consultation and or relying on our partners at Regional Sewer District. They have billions of dollars of assets and utilities that they maintain, and they're more sophisticated with matrices of how they prioritize and budget and fund the project. So I'd like to give council and administration just a more accurate, more professional document that you can easily, more objective than just subjective and kind of willy-nilly, as maybe there's a feeling that right now or in the past, maybe it's not so systematic and not so data-driven. So we would like to get more of the objectivity into it and look at the matrices so that when we start off with a 5-year planning process, you can sort of understand where how the priorities got to be what they are. And of course, there's going to be some subjectivity to it. There always is because of the dynamics, but I think it'll just be more effective than it's ever been. So that would be our goal.
So you're talking about funding, you're talking about prioritizing, you're talking about, I think one of the things we've had a conversation is that, we think we're going down a path of everything's structured. You got this project, all of a sudden, this changes and boom, it's a high priority. Or we find money from an outside source and it becomes a priority. So it's fluid, it's constantly evolving. And as much as we'd like to, we have this discussion all the time internally, as much as we'd like to say, here it is, it's etched in stone, we can't etch it in stone. So what we're trying to do is get more data driven so that when we come to council, we can say, here's the priorities, and as long as we don't have a hiccup, we should be good with it. If we have a hiccup, then all of a sudden we'll throw a facility in there that'll set this back, and then, so it's just it's what we're doing today. We're basically trying to examine all the different elements that go into planning for the future and then trying to prioritize them and fund them. And then you get into the whole funding level, which is a different dynamic in its own right. So, you have, like Vern always talks about, there's so much money we could spend, internal capital, then this capital, and then if we really want to do something of a larger magnitude, then we're in a position we can borrow. And our debt is such today that we're in really good shape for a community our size, with a budget our size, to be able to go out and fund some of these major projects, if in fact that's what council wants to do. So, but that's the next level of dynamic for this whole thing. So what we try to do today is just not inundate you with information, not the details of all the stuff we sent you, but to give you a flavor, a broad stroke. So before anybody asked, was there a hard stop at 5 o'clock, or was that, I think somebody said we had a hard stop.
Yeah.
The deal was at 5 or 4:30?
When an honor stands?
Yeah.
5:40.
Oh, 5:40?
5:40, oh, worse than, okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, because I can't take you this way.
Go ahead,
A
Jim.
question for Don real quick. Don, so we talked a couple hours just on infrastructure projects, and that was kind of one of my takeaways, like these maintenance contracts, we're doing things that come up, but the goal of getting more systematic and what is the limiting factor with the dollars, seal coating asphalt, if we think, what that cycle should be, I don't know, say it's 10 years. If we know every square foot of asphalt needs a seal coat every 10 years, what does our budget need to be? I guess that's part of some of that discussion, just kind of really identifying versus $500,000, we used to be able to do this, now because of cost, we can only do this, and if we have that turnaround, so I think that's a good thing, I mean, just throughout, for all these things that we do, if we can really get to keep the level of maintenance there, what is the dollar limit and.
Identify what's needed.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there, I guess that's a quick question, I'd like to expound upon that if I could. Is there a timetable you usually use in terms of seal coating after we repave? And do we wait, like, I know you wait a year before you, or some time frame before you actually seal coat? And then you seal coat, and then how long is that, the expectation for that to last, how many years? And then do we seal coat again? And I know that there's these different types of seal coating that we've experimented with over the years, and we try to expose ourselves to some of these new technologies. They don't always work though. They've used a couple different seal coating products, and they don't always work. So, but you think that we're getting to the point where when we repave a street, we have to go in 2 years or 3 years or whatever the time period is, and seal coat it in order to extend that life, the maximum amount of life? Do you have a formula you've put together over your 10 years, or is it still a work in progress?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I know that crack seal, we would always target 3, 6, and 9 year intervals after something was resurfaced, just to stay on it early and then maintain it, knowing that a pavement surface could last you 15, 18 years. So that's a rule of thumb. I would call it more of a rule of thumb, but it's probably similar can be said for the seal coating of our parking lots. We were trying with that mastic surface seal, and that product didn't availability issues, but yeah, pavement preservation, and if streets are in better condition now, it's just a higher priority to keep them in better condition for longer periods of time. So the shared use facility is a good example. We just paved it, it's in great shape, held up pretty well over the winter, and now we want to go in here as early as year 1 and seal coat it just to protect it, because every layer that you give it is just one more, it's going to be what degrades from the ultraviolet and the salts, versus the actual asphalt. So early and often is just a rule of thumb. So and we just try to balance the budget and look at our streets, and we do look at them. We look at them routinely every time we're developing lists, because we always have to give our contractors lists of what we think we're going to send them to go do. So we try to look at what's needed regardless of the schedule, because things might degrade more quickly than others, even when you're trying to maintain a set schedule. So.
Along that line, there was a question that was brought up last week about the agreement with the parking lot. Yeah, I shared what I thought, but you want to just say what it is in terms of what the expectation is, what the deal is between the school and the city?
Yeah, based on that agreement, it was basically a cost share 50-50 of any sort of maintenance activity that's needed at that shared use facility. So we agreed to pave it, get it into a good working order, and then, so this year, the seal coating, we're gonna find out the dollars that a contract is gonna take to seal coat that and calculate it, and ask the school to pay for or reimburse us for 50% of that cost.
And that's every year, whatever that cost is gonna be in the future, they're gonna have to be responsible for 50%, is that?
50%.
Is that strictly maintenance, or in 20, 30 years when we have to do a complete resurfacing, does that include major overhauls as well?
Well, I'm hoping that the formula that we have in place is gonna last a long time, because we're gonna be disciplined enough to crack seal, to seal coat, to do everything that's we'd like to do on every street. And if that's the case, then it could last, who knows, I can't sit here and predict how long something's gonna last, but I do know that I believe we put the best formula in place to monitor it, to manage it, so that we're not in a situation we were a year ago when we did that. So I think that's going to work. I'm excited to watch that evolve. Not that I want to take out 20, 30 years, but I mean, I do want to make sure that we should be very effective in terms of the cost. And we get a cost, we get our cost, they're gonna reimburse us 50% every year. That was the deal. Yeah.
Did the provision make it into the final draft that the school district and maybe even us have to start putting some money in a sinking fund? I'll call it that word, so that we knew when we got to the point where the parking lot was gonna need replacement, the school district wouldn't be scrambling saying, hey, we don't have the money. I thought we were asking for them to put 50, whatever the number was, $50,000 a year aside. Did it make it into the final agreement, do we remember?
I don't believe a firm number made it into it. I believe is what Don was going to keep them apprised, so that say, with this strategy of putting together maintenance, whatever it is, if we see down the road 10, 15 years from now, whoever's here, we're gonna see the agreement, we're gonna start making sure that they're aware that there's gonna be a capital call somewhere down the road.
Well, we know that now.
Well,
it's gonna be there, it's
yeah.
a question of when.
I can't, I'm dealing with 5 years, I'm dealing with 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, after that, you know, someone smarter than me is gonna have to handle that one.
Did council ever pass a new joint use agreement for that facility?
We had to, we had to pass it or we wouldn't.
I think it was
Yeah,
legislation, both for the school board and.
School board had to pass it, we had to pass it, so.
I don't know if it was, I don't remember that being in there, but
Yeah.
it's a good idea to revisit that.
I think it was more of they didn't want to lock into a number. Because we tried to make that clear. And then I think at some point somebody mentioned it's all the communities, so.
So I,
It's all the communities.
can I throw something out there about this? Because I'm listening, and I think I heard you talk about technology, you talk about technology, everybody talked about technology and infrastructure and servers, but do we have a strategy for that? Are we going to the cloud? Are we relying on what we have today? From somebody who spent my entire career
I don't have
upgrading.
Jim,
I'm just saying we may,
Gibbs on here.
no, I'm saying, but we may want to consider
you are.
that, because if we're talking about doing all this technology-driven, right, upgrades, if you don't have the infrastructure in place, you're just throwing money
Well,
down the drain.
we thought, when we talked about it internally, we thought that you'd be the technology chairman,
Well,
so.
I'm
Because
just
of your
saying,
experience,
well, no,
I say
because,
that facetiously, but I say it honestly.
I mean, because servers are out, everybody's going to the cloud, there's cost, security, we're talking about cyber, you got insurance coverages for cyber college, so there's I think that's something we need to have as part, that's my point, and I don't know where we're at this point in time.
I think it's a fair question. I think we should have a roundtable with Jim Gibbs.
And just,
And I think you would be, I would really lean
I'm gonna have
on
to-
you for that, if you consider
but
it.
isn't what we're talking about, adding all this GPS, all these,
Yeah.
well, it talks to something. And it's,
No.
And there's dangers in the cloud.
well, of course there are. There's dangers everywhere.
We got a lot of clouds.
But yes, and there's server, the point is, I think it's something we probably, as we talk about all this technology, we should probably have a strategy as to how we're gonna store all this data, or how we interact with that data. I don't know if everybody's using their own different systems. I don't, you're on a certain engineering system, probably services on a different one, police. Some security, they all need to
Well, some of them have
interact.
for security reasons, we can't cross-pollinate.
Yeah,
But at least in terms of engineering. in
finance.
terms of Service,
Yeah.
they, we can do that,
Actually-
which we did, which we're doing.
You're even talking about scheduling and community services, right? All that stuff you use in some sort of program.
Contribute in that way, anybody that wants to, because I think it's really important. I think thank you for bringing that up, because that's really tying it all together. It's really gonna be important, and it's expensive too, it's not cheap to do that.
Yeah. Right.
But, so, thank
I'm
you.
just thinking, because everybody's talking
No,
about
no.
how critical it is, in what we're looking to do.
I appreciate that you'll lend a hand, that's good. Lend experience, that's what we're all trying to do, right?
Well, if you wanna go 4 times over your budget in 5 years, that's how it works in the real world, so.
So that's why you're gonna help us
Yeah.
refine that. Last time I checked, who's the finance committee chair?
Yeah.
Let me see, how's that work? So, I opened the floor this time because we just wanna go global, show what some of our departments are doing. Obviously, IT is its own animal, but Kevin, you're a student, you caught on that, it touches every department in order to stay ahead of it, because I think Don articulated it to the point where when we have all these plans, and to tie those all together, and eventually hit the cloud and you have it all at your fingertips, it's going to be just that much more efficient. So,
Can I ask a question, if you're opening the floor?
yeah, go ahead.
Do we think that if the 60-some homes come for the Concordia, that the fire department would be adequate in size?
Yeah. A lot of vulnerable people who might be going in those homes.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I think the chief was, I think there was a discussion, John, as member of the planning commission, he brought that up about making sure that our vehicles could safely traverse and have access, so.
Yeah, we always do that, turns, everything like that, make sure we get in and out of things.
You know, the manpower, person power, I guess.
Person power.
Person power would be adequate. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Person power.
Person power would be adequate. If we thought maybe the dorm space.
Bigger impact would be like a new medical facility, something like that would be a bigger impact.
I'm just curious if as you were looking at adding on.
Chance to go to see Boundless, the facility that just opened up on West Creek. You need to exempt yourself from your world for about an hour, go down and you go inside and you take a tour, and you'll see what that facility does for people, adults, and the way they integrate them back into society or allow them to be part of society, and the dynamic of the different elements they do for people. It's really, if you get a chance, you gotta go down there.
And also disabilities.
Yeah, and if you want, Jess can make sure, because they're very open to letting us to walk through the. So, okay, going back on point. Vern, is there anything at this point you want to add?
No, I saw the directors on the agenda today, so we're just absorbing, and I'm sure UI will have our seat at the table.
Hey, Mayor, can I put something out there? And I'm sure that Ron and Dave will certainly agree with this. We've really been struggling with the purchasing threshold. Dave, I'm sure, and Ron, we just had that an emergency repair that needed to be done to one of the trucks. We're trying to figure out how we could facilitate it. The repairs for $16,000, but it's at a point that would need council's approval. And, I think a lot of the directors have struggled trying to get things done. We start looking at some of these contracts, or if you start trying to reach out and just even get, 2 or 3 quotes, a lot of vendors don't even want to bother, quoting it just because it takes, time is money.
So there's 2 issues I heard you just talked about. One, the limit, which is done by charter. You can't go over $15,000 on a single purpose issue without council approval on an emergency basis. The second issue I heard you talk about was the challenges your experience in just trying to get people to bid on or participate in a public's bid or a bid, or tell me what?
Well, actually, it would be for both, but even, for the threshold between $5,000 and, $15,000, a lot of times, you might be able to get 2 quotes. You can't get 3 quotes. Sometimes it's just more, you'll get a lower quote, but it's, economically more sound to purchase locally, as opposed, to send somebody out to Mentor to pick up some flowers or dirt, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Why don't you, you mentioned some names, guys collaborate, put something together. Let's see a draft of it, we'll get it to the law department, then we'll take it to council and explain what the situation is, and if there's something that they have the authority to change, we can change it, but you can't change the limit, I know that. That's gotta go to the vote of the people.
15,000 threshold, that would tick the voters, obviously,
Yeah.
but the 5 to 15,000 range that Dennis mentions, thanks for bringing it up today, Dennis. I was gonna broach that subject with council tomorrow, but the door's open now, so if I can just take a minute. There was legislation passed a few years back that said for purchases between 5,000 and 15,000, it does give a little out, it says when possible, but it says that we need 3 informal bids and proposals to do that. And that works in reality a little better if we're buying chairs or paper or things of actual items you can touch and feel. But when it comes to the professional services and personal services that Dennis mentions, that $5,000 to $15,000 threshold has been a real struggle for the directors and the finance department to adequately manage. And so just maybe at a finance committee meeting, a council workshop, I would like to open the door to just broach that subject with council, take their temperature to see if we could come to some kind of better solution to that issue and the reason why the legislation was in place in the first place.
I think we have a workshop, a couple next week, right?
On the 15th.
Maybe just add it.
15, you wanna add that to, put it between you and them, could they put something together between now and the 15th? We'll add it to the 15th agenda.
Makes sense to me.
Is that okay? Yeah, let's do that. You guys rough something up so the council can review it and have a discussion and go from there.
5,000, 3 estimates,
Yeah.
over 5,000 was 2019, Mayor. And since COVID, prices have risen
Yeah,
dramatically.
COVID changed the dynamic. This was done before COVID, I think.
2019,
Okay,
yes.
that was before
passed.
COVID, yeah.
Three prices, anything over
It's a different
5,000.
dynamic today, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you, I just think you gotta go through the procedure, let's
So
get the.
certain vendors won't even give you a price anymore because they're knocked out of the ballpark for everything.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. If you can, Vern, and get together and rough something up, and we'll get it on the agenda. Okay? What else?
You can share, yeah, everyone got some comments or?
Go ahead.
Jim, you provided the most information.
Jim, yeah,
A couple of ideas. One thing, let's start from the top on the school thing. Because they might be asking to purchase or swap our property, something like that. Do you think we should get together with them relatively quickly before they go out and discuss this as to how this might work? And the reason I say that is because if they want to either utilize or purchase property, we got to be involved in some way. If they just go out and say, and they're an independent elected body, they can do what they want, but I just think it might make some sense to sooner than later sit down with them. My measured opinion is that if they're talking about a $90 million project, I can see no chance of that passing in the city of Independence.
Is that a realistic number?
I've heard the number of 91.
oh, no, less than,
That's from the school board president, so.
no, I've heard less than half of that, 40.
Well, I hope so, because that might be.
Good, you just set the bar so high, anything less.
Yeah, so
No,
you hear
I-
numbers like this, and it's like, let's get a hold of this pretty quickly.
Don't hold me to it, but I thought it was like half of that.
That was a number of years ago.
I sure hope so.
I don't know, I'm just telling you, you know.
Well, I think we should probably do that.
Well, let's,
Yeah.
so we'll schedule a workship with
Have an honest
council.
assessment.
And, you know, I don't know, if next week or 15th, if they might be available, maybe.
We got two pieces of legislation, and we got this, I mean, if we're there with that good, I mean, we got a lot to do.
Public plans, who does that public plans?
What's that?
I just say, we've got several pieces of
Okay,
legislation.
well, then we can just, I'll just,
But I mean, it might be a good idea,
Yeah.
let's see what they can do, but I mean, if they're talking about doing something, I think we should probably talk to them sooner than
I'll
later.
call the superintendent tomorrow and say, I broached the subject with council, they really want to get a discussion going, to understand what you're trying to accomplish, and then what role they play. Is that fair?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I had a conversation with the board president back in June when we were graduating, that graduating class of 2024. And he indicated at that time that he wanted to get together as soon as possible with council. Well, that was back in June, and we're already back around to April, so it's definitely a priority.
I think they're trying to figure out what they.
No, this is as of last week, so I can tell you, this was a conversation as of last week, so.
That's good.
So let's get them, I'll tell them, the council has to have an understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, and then what role they can play. Is that fair?
And do you have any idea if they're shooting for the November election, or are they going next May?
I think November, but don't quote me on it.
That's what I heard too.
I think November, but don't quote me on it. But we'll confirm that and the amount. Those are the two elements. On you, I wanna know exactly.
Those are the things you need to know, right?
Yeah. So yeah, Jim, to answer your question, I'll get that set up. If they can meet, if nothing else, if the board can't meet, or it's too convoluted, maybe the superintendent just come and spend a few minutes with us.
Yeah. I think that'd be a good idea, Mayor.
Okay, I'll handle that one. What else?
There's a lot of ideas, I just want to, you know, I'm not the only one here, so I just.
Well, I appreciate it, like you took the time to throw things on the wall.
Pick your favorites, Jim.
Yeah, well, there's a few favorites. Yeah, so with respect, I apologize, I wasn't here for the Streets of Southwest meeting, but on the Brecksville Road project, what were we thinking in terms of timing on that, and how we wanted to kind of approach that? Because if we did want to do something to meet the state schedule for next year, that means we probably have a rather substantial expenditure.
Yeah, I think it's twofold. There's the water main component, and then there's the concrete component. So we spent a lot of time this past Thursday looking at all the concrete work that's needed. If you want to make it nice and clean, and when the asphalt job is over, everything is clean and in good repair. It was every bit of 1.3 million for curbs, aprons, catch basin repairs, island repairs. Sidewalks was in there, which again, we talked about, well, sidewalks, it's outside the pavement limits, so you weren't so much under the gun to get that done. So the downtown area with all the brick areas, we talked about that, but then of course the water main component, we just talked about the committee, the potential for lining. We're gonna try to get a meeting with Cleveland Water and hear from the top people at Cleveland Water, the viability of lining. Just so we have a good feel for, how practical that is, and whether they would allow it, and if so, how they would allow it, versus also asking for funding type assistance that might be available, such a big main on such a large corridor, arterial. Also for replacement, we can put it, any sort of recommendations they might have relative to where to put a new main. You have two options: replace it right where it's at, have to do a bypass system. That lends itself to being done during a summer period, so the freezing isn't an issue with the bypass system. Or build a parallel main like we like to do in our neighborhoods, where you maintain the existing service from the existing main, put the new main offset 3 to 5 feet away, and build it, pressurize it, test it, transfer all the connections, and so there's just different approaches, so we thought we'd get some input from Cleveland Water directly. So a lot of moving parts, have a consultant looking at cost estimates, and so we're not really moving.
So we have the element of the road pavement for the state, which is a target date of mid-summer of '26. We've got the water main, which we've looked at maybe 3 different sections. Is that fair?
Yeah, we broke it up into thirds, make it more manageable. funding and construction safety.
And then we're looking at, and we're trying to get some feedback from, and by the way, Anthony, thanks for the video for that on Chestnut Road. We were really lucky because that feeds Seven Hills and Parma. And so one of the challenges and concerns I have is, having dealt with these guys a little bit, is the pressure changes on those big lines, those 12-inch or larger lines, and how they adjust those. You know, they adjust them sometimes with computers rather than just, they're not out there turning on a valve anymore.
Right.
And so the problem I see is, you know, we're subject to pushing the wrong button, the wrong pressure. This is not freeze and thaw anymore. This is not freeze and thaw like we had experienced in the winter. There's something that's just, it's inconsistent with, especially Chestnut, although it's a big high pressure main going to the west. My point being is we're gonna talk to the department leadership and have them educate us, because it's just not right, it's not fair that we're subject to these things continuously. Now, going back to this project, we are checking to see if we can line. Of course, if you line, it's easy because then the connections, you don't have to disrupt everything. The other, if we replace and we do it parallel, it's easy to cross-pollinate, correct me if I misspeak, cross-pollinate the connections, so, because we're in the same ditch. If we try to move it somewhere else, now all of a sudden you got all those connections you still have to make. So one of the things we're talking about is, you know, if they come in and they redo a section, right? And so what's the impact on us? So then we go out, we saw cut. It's not like the old days where you just rip everything open. You actually saw cut a firm trench. Then you go down 4 foot, 5 foot maybe, and then you go in, you put your new main in, adjacent to the existing main above, or somewhere right close to it, make your connections. Then you fill it with flowable fill, so it's got a firm base, there's no just compacted fill, it's flowable fill. And then you come in with a 6 foot, and you regrind 6 feet of it, and you resurface it, and all new again. So the only thing we're paying, we paid 20% of the pavement, so it's not as though there's a total waste of monies. But we may wanna we may not get to all 3 of them. And if we can't get to all 3 of them, that will be and I talked to a few people, a few residents, I said, look, as long as you're only saw cutting a certain element of it, you're not just open cutting the whole road again. That makes some sense, because you can make it seamless, look seamless in terms of the paving surface coat, if you use flowable fill. So we're looking at lining, we're looking at potentially doing a plan, but the other thing is that Don didn't mention is to try to get plans drawn and approved by Cleveland Water and all that in a little over a year. It's just not gonna happen.
Don, when we met at the utilities meeting, you'd indicated at that time that this lining process, you didn't have any examples of where it had been done and how successful it was. Do you have any more information related to that?
Yeah, I think I brought up a couple examples that CT had mentioned doing. One was a few projects in Euclid, and it was under their urban program for Cleveland Water at the time. And I think in those instances, the main was probably in the tree lawn, and so they still had to dig up to make the transfers with the service connections. The one scenario was under a railroad corridor, which obviously having to maintain live tracks, they couldn't dig up a main, and in lieu of boring it, I think they lined the main. There were no connections on that segment of main under the highway or under the railroad rather. So it had been done, and it was for Cleveland Water's system. Both of those projects were in Cleveland Water's system. So it has been done. Just trying to see in terms of the applicability, whether or not this stretch on this street is appropriate, and whether the service connections. That video we showed you that the technology was there to poke and reinstate the existing connections right internal from the main, and we're trying to determine how successful that is and all practicality of it in terms of how feasible it is, or what's the success rate of that technology on the mains.
Yeah, that was the target of my question, because, you know, they had indicated at that they'd used a depression or a dimple, and another situation they'd use something that extended. But when you're doing that, how large of a segment can you do at once, and what's the effect on the water flow during that time?
Yeah, I think that,
Because, I mean, you had mentioned that you're gonna send it, you're gonna bore it, and then, but in that time when you're doing that, the thing is shut down. So you gotta have that water line, that surface water line there.
right, the bypass system.
Right.
Set up in place, because they, remember they gotta ream the pipe to get it all the rust and get the pipe nice and open back up to its full diameter, so that when they line it, you got the whole hose pipe is nice and, the volume is there. So, right, you have to bypass. So again, that targets you to the summer season, but in thinking that it could be done after the resurfacing project, you wouldn't be limited to time. The limit is about, they said 400 to 500 feet is like a length that begin access pits, because it has to, you have to access the main, and there's runs of up, I thought that was the number in the video, and or at every valve, because you can't line through valves. So when you think about valves on the main line for every side street, there's typically a valve.
With that.
So it may be that the limiting factor is the distance between existing valves. So those are the technical logistics, but there would be points of excavation on the main, just not every running feet of the foot of the main, but much less of an impact to a new road over top, so.
So this is gonna be, the Cleveland Water is gonna dictate pretty much our strategy, because it's their water line, even though they say we're responsible for it. They're gonna give us a thumbs up, thumbs down to whatever procedure we wanna follow. And I caution council and that I don't see us being able to match that timetable, the limited timetable we have. And so we don't wanna sacrifice Route 21, because it's terrible. And if we have to just saw cut a 4-foot section, 5-foot section, and then being able to resurface that afterward, then that may be the strategy, but we really won't know more definitive answers until we talk to the water department, and then they can shed some light on our options that we presented and had preliminary discussions with them. It's time that Alex, we have a very direct discussion. And the next discussion we're gonna have is, why are we responsible for 12-inch water mains? It's like, come on, you know, and why are we subject to your computerization, your valves, and the way you know, just like you turn a valve on at your own house, open a valve real quick, and you can create chaos at your own house. Fire department will tell you with respect to hydrants, same thing. So we don't know if we're being subjected to mismanagement, or just old, or technology, or we won't have the answers, but I just wanna make sure you're aware of the fact this is a moving target, and we can't guarantee we're gonna be able to get it done on a timely basis. So it begs the question of, do you want to spend money to do the curb and gutter, the 1.3 million or whatever it is, knowing that they're gonna come in, they're gonna resurface, pave it, clean it up, and then we'll probably in certain sections have to grind, open cut to fix the main, and then the backfill would be with flowable fill, and then resurface something wider than what they trenched, so it looks seamless. So think about that, because if we get some answers back, we'll be before council asking you what to do, and if we're gonna do the concrete work, and that becomes a priority, funding priority, and then we have to be able to immediately, start that process, so.
Well, I guess I would comment that, yeah, you need the curbs, but it seems to make so little sense to me not to take care of whatever we have to do related to the water main. We've managed in the area north of Rockside to not have the state money come into play as we worked on various things, various delays along the way. I'm not sure I understand why it has become critical that this has to be paved in 2026. I realize Brecksville is being paved in 2026, but I'm not sure exactly, Don, explain to me exactly why we have to be forced into that. If you look at Brecksville Road, and you know, as I rode home with some of my different colleagues, there are really very large sections of road that are decent. There are some areas that in the past, I know that 7 or 8 years ago, we did some area patching. I remember you marking it and areas that were taken care of. It seems to me like realizing we're only contributing 20% and they're contributing 80%, that it seems a waste for them to contribute their 80% to do something that we're gonna tear up over something that potentially could end up being like Chestnut Road. And realizing that that is a high pressure water main, which ours, I don't know how high the pressure is there. That's an engineer question. But
Yeah, I recommended to the mayor that we get this project done in 2026 because the conditions of the pavement, our pavement condition rating for our stretch was equal to Brecksville's. ODOT really they were so close, they were both poor condition. And knowing that how beat up it is, so when we did the resurfacing, that strip patching, it was really meant to extend the life of the overlay, which I think it has. And you look at those areas, they're probably better than anything else out there. But that was meant to extend, that road was last paved, I think, in '03. So we're already 22, 23, by 2026, it'll be, it's just a lot of years that have gone by, and it's time. And I just felt like we want to hold that resurfacing hostage to get millions and millions of dollars of water mains replaced prior to that. And I think I told you last time that Brecksville, I gotta believe, has the same vintage water main as I thought I saw a hole down there near Wallings not too long ago. So I think they're in the same boat with the realities of the costs. I do believe that the section north of the Rockside, it's older, it's probably last resurfaced even before '03 and maybe in the late '90s, but it's held up better for whatever reason. Maybe because of how the boulevard got expanded over the years. I think it was a center island that was bigger, so it got widened over the years. I think the pavement, different compositions, because we run into full depth asphalt sections, we got brick on concrete. So I think a lot of those dynamics, it's performed, hasn't held up as well as that north section, I think was original when it was constructed. So those are the dynamics, and knowing with the technologies and some of these other things that we could do post resurfacing that might, so I don't know that's the best answer for you, but it's our main thoroughfare through town, it's our front door. I do think it's the worst street in the city, and I think I don't know that I think we could get in trouble letting it go too much longer.
It's also the most used, right?
Oh, right.
It's our main north-south corridor.
It's almost, because I live on Brecksville, with this tractor trailers with the big stones that have been going down, they go right down Brecksville Road, mid-beat through all down. I mean, do you know what I'm talking about? Those, they're going down to the canals, wherever
They're going to, it's the railroad.
Yeah.
The railroad.
Well, they just, I mean, for that one section, that's what I'm saying.
If it would be real easy if it was clear and easy. It'd be a real easy decision if we could say, okay, we'll do X, Y, Z. We're gonna resurface this road. That's an easy decision. This is one where you have to decide, do you wanna get the road redone? Do you wanna get the curb and gutter done in anticipation of the pavement being redone? So that it would be good for a long time? Or do you wanna wait and try to piecemeal ourselves until we can get the water line done? And I don't know when that'll happen. And if someone's got a crystal ball or an answer, or just look at the majority of council, tell me what to do. I mean, all I can do is present options, but it's your decision.
Let's see what the Cleveland Water comes up with. I mean, but what you're proposing, I think, makes sense. That I'd like to see it all done as soon as we can. It is in pretty tough shape, but the water mains really are critical. I mean, we gotta get that accomplished too. So whatever we can find out from them. If we do it at the same time, or if we do what you're talking about with the cross cuts, you know, I'm resigned to the fact that that might be the reality of it, because we just don't have the time or money to do a lot of other things right now, so.
So we're gonna meet with them, talk about why are we responsible first, why do we have to pay for these things? And then they'll come back with that agreement we didn't sign years ago, I'm sure. But then once we get down to the rubber meeting the road, we'll find out realistically how soon they can put plans to help us put plans together and approve plans and see if we're even see if we can even meet up with that timetable of designing, getting approval, and then building of the water main. It may be not feasible to even be able to think we're gonna get that done on a timely basis. I don't have the answer to that, but once we get that answer back, if there's a way to expedite getting something done, even if it's one phase of it. One phase would be better than nothing, but I'm not adverse to having them come in and resurface the road, knowing we've all watched, you've seen where they saw cut sections of pavement, and they dig it out, they do their work, put it back, and then with today's technology and flowable fill, you can resurface it, you won't even know, other than where you seal the joints. But if someone doesn't believe that that's even if you guys said, no, we're not doing that, that's easy. We'll go to plan B.
I would just, considering the fact that the water line is nearly 100 years old, it should be an extreme priority for us. Today, in the city of Independence, we have 2 roads that are closed due to water breaks. We've got Ashwood and Chestnut. That whole intersection is pretty destroyed. And Hillside Road is closed because of a water main break. It's going to continue to happen. This year, I believe we've had the most water main breaks of any year in recent history, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. And when you look at the devastation that's done from the water main breaks to the roadways, to think about $1 million worth of pavement going down and over 100-year-old water line, it just seems irresponsible on our behalf. We need to start these discussions with Cleveland Water. We need to get the ball moving. I don't know if we have started these discussions with the lining opportunities, but it should be an utmost priority.
Well, we've had initial conversations, but, so you want us to do all the water mains?
Well, I would like at least some sort of feasibility of the potential of breaking it up or doing it all. We haven't really had much information regarding all that.
I thought Don shared that we would have to break 21 up into 3 sections. I thought we shared that.
Yeah, right, we have some rough estimates, but you're talking lining, you're talking trench cutting, there's a lot of factors at play that decisions haven't been made on.
Well, lining is it's a different opportunity, we don't know. But if you just want to go by Don's estimates that he shared with council in terms of the Route 21, you've gotten that, we'll get you that again.
That's $20 million.
So the question is, we won't be paving any streets or building any stuff if we're gonna spend $20 million. Are you suggesting that
We won't buy a photocopy.
spend $20 million on water mains?
No, I'm suggesting we investigate the most fragile portion of the water main and perhaps focus on that while we're paving. I mean, there's ways to go about this that are in the best financial interest of the city of Independence, and just simply paving over a 100-year-old water main and waiting for it to break, I don't think is in the best financial interest.
I'm not aware of, unless you're more aware of a way to diagnose or determine which section's more weak or which section's more strong.
We did that hotspot, I think, that Don shared at the last
Well,
one, so.
that was just a matter of, here's where they
That was
broke.
just age.
Yeah, here's where they broke.
Right, we don't know if the tolerance is up.
So let me
They
understand.
probably won't break where they broke already, but so go ahead.
No, my question, and I believe because the water mains are on the east side of Brexville Road, is that correct? Because it sits right outside my driveway, and I had flooding. You think you saw flooding, you just seen the flooding by now.
It's worse?
Oh, yeah, just as bad. But the point being, what I'm asking then, is the west side of Brexville, like if you go, it wouldn't be impacted by, any of that. That's what I'm trying to get my head around here. You know what I'm suggesting, that the other side of Brexville Road, whether you do the water main or
On the west
not,
side, no problem.
from the middle of the road over, really wouldn't be impacted.
Service connections, unless Clean Water forces us to replace service connections, then.
Oh,
Yeah, so,
it's not that simple.
well, no,
That question we're gonna
It's-
pose to Clean Water.
if it's are they gonna force us to replace the service connections? Well, then you gotta cut up each one,
We're trying to mull.
or mow
To
through them.
to the west side of
You could do that,
Okay.
but
Your
man,
gas main, transmission.
yeah,
The other side, I
exactly.
was
Would be a little risky.
The other side doesn't impact.
Yeah, that makes
Maybe
sense.
okay.
The other utilities are on the
And
other
that's what
side,
John
right?
was
So-
that's why I can't get
So
it.
to answer your question, I think, if we're talking $20 million, and there's no real science to say this section or this section, it's a matter of this one blew up by his house, this one just went by your house, we had one by Topolsky's house, we've had them, you can name by houses more than I can addresses, but, so, yeah, all of a sudden, this exercise just takes us out of, I mean, it's nice to be able to say, this is the highest priority. But then when you find out it's $20 million, all of a sudden it's like, yeah, well, it's gonna take a lot of infrastructure, a lot of years before we finish just the water main reconstruction, before we can pave. And then we have to be able to spend all the money to resurface, so, yeah, we're on the same page, we wanna get it done, but I think there has to be some realistic dynamic, a realistic approach to cost, because you just can't, I'd like to wave a magic wand too and say, hey, let's get them all done. But it's just not gonna happen that way. It's just, from a business standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, it's a nice conversation, but it's not gonna happen that way.
You said spend all the money, isn't it still an 80-20 when the state works that part of the
I'm sorry,
project?
Gail, I was talking about the water mains.
Okay, I was talking about if we were able to delay the paving, would it still be an 80-20?
Yeah, it wouldn't change.
That wouldn't change, okay.
Don, clarify though, the 80 is not just paying for the pavement, the surface, resurface.
Oh, yeah, it's got.
We're on our road for the water.
Because we're
Right, you are
talking
correct.
80-20, we're talking 20 million. My recollection on the capital plan is,
2026.
this project's listed as a $32 million project, $2 million ODOT money, $30 million from the city. That's if we did it all completely. That's today's cost.
Yeah, yeah, it's just not realistic to think that we can get that done.
On another topic, Jessica, would it make any sense to consider with the Northwest Quadrant having a joint economic development district with Seven Hills and Brooklyn Heights? Because if there's more territory there than with us, maybe we can share costs that way as well as share revenues that might come in.
Brooklyn Heights, we have an agreement we signed back in 1999 with them for their 15 acres. That's really all they really have, and it's pretty much landlocked to independence. But we would be, if there was a dynamic where somebody wanted to build and we could actually build on that 15 acres, we'd be more than happy to work with Brooklyn Heights on it. If it means something that benefits Brooklyn Heights, I think it's important that we do that. Seven Hills, absolutely. We communicate, but we don't do it, we don't try to hurt each other in the process. You know what I mean? We have a good enough relationship where if there's something that we can't manage, we can always talk to them, and we have a good relationship with them. But it's getting better because we're gonna have another meeting with them.
I just want to clarify though, that it can't be a JED, a joint economic development district, those require a township.
Yeah.
But it would have to be there could be the potential for some other type of agreement.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Northwest Quadrant next Tuesday in executive session.
Tomorrow.
Or tomorrow, yeah, Tuesday, next Tuesday, tomorrow, in executive session, so.
Before or after?
It doesn't matter, it'll be a brief conversation, so it won't, we can do it beforehand.
And vote after.
Right after? Okay, I'm okay.
After.
Yeah, sure. Did we answer all your questions? I don't remember.
No, I'll share some topics, or just ideas as, going through this, and this is a really good exercise. There's probably dozens or hundreds of ideas on here, and they've kind of built up over the years. But I do feel like, if we get it, we share ideas, then we say, well, now it's on the administration and directors get busy, and I feel like that's not really fair from my standpoint. So how do we help? How do we help see some of these things come together. I wonder if there's another committee beyond people in here, kind of like the tree commission exists. We get residents, we get some expert people, kind of like help develop some strategic ideas. We've had multiple meetings on Route 21. We're talking more about it in this meeting, but we've got a dozen other things to cover at utilities and streets meeting too. Like there's just like massive projects out there and it's too long. It takes we can't get 7 people together for these meetings. I just wonder if there's a better way that we can set up a future council to either address these or rebrand one of our existing committees. I'm looking at like economic development. I chaired that last time. There's less going on day to day in that committee than streets or finance. If there's some way, if we want to think about like a strategic engagement committee, maybe peel some of these things off just to make some more progress, because there's so much on here.
Yeah, I think your thoughts, it's clear, yes, there's too much. It's too cumbersome to try to go through every nook and cranny, everything. We go off on a sign bar and we're spending $20 million and we're trying to figure, so it just erodes the core of the conversation. I would do this. Each of you, if you take some few minutes and fill out this sheet, your 5 priorities, and your secondary 5 priorities, and then what dates we want to meet. I think once we get that, John, we can see if there's a core element of issues, then we can hone in on that, and then prioritize those and see how much of an overlap there is. And then the rest of it, I'm open to a conversation to engage more people, because I can tell you, the department heads are working multidimensionally from a day-to-day to a 10-year strategy. And so, sure, why don't we just fill those out now before we leave? I'd appreciate it. Everybody that spoke today would appreciate it, because they put a lot of time and effort into this, and I think it's, we want to keep them motivated. And if you have more you want to say, absolutely turn it in.
Yeah, can you just email them to me, because we got this 12-page document given to us now.
Well, you can just fill these out. Now, this is based on today, this is just based on.
No, I understand that, but I'd like to go through the.
Oh, you can take that with you?
Yeah.
But at least fill this out so that we have these, and then if you want to add on to it, absolutely, add on to it. That'd be perfect, yeah.
I guess I have one additional question, because in some ways, and maybe it's just the way I'm thinking about this, it seems to me that in some ways we're doing this a little bit backwards. I think I would appreciate knowing from Vern, what are we looking at an anticipated income for the next year? And then after looking at the anticipated income, taking a look at the required expenditures that we know we have to pay, to have a handle on exactly what is available. Because unfortunately, as much as I enjoyed listening to the needs of each wants of each department, I guess I would have appreciated it more had each department gave just the top 1 or 2 things that they feel need to be funded. I go back, and that's because I'm older than most of you, but I go back and I know how much salary I earned, and it was pretty much fixed as an educator, okay? And I knew it had to last through a whole year, and I knew at Christmas time I had a certain amount set aside, and I have 3 kids, and I know that some of it is on stuff the kids don't want, pajamas or whatever, but there's also an amount available for additional things, or for toys. And the kid that comes up with a 12-item list, well, it looks great, but I guess the reality is, which 1 or 2 items realistically are ones that we should concentrate and focus on? So I don't know, am I old, or does that make sense?
No, I appreciate the fact you want to put the numbers associated with everything, but I think what we're trying to say is, Dale, forget the money for a second. What are your priorities? And then then we consolidate all these together, and then we come up with the money and say, hey, well, knock this one out, it's $20 million, or pare this back to $5 million, or adjust this. You can't, I wouldn't be adjusting, I wouldn't ask to adjust until we know and we can prioritize. So this is a small exercise, gentlemen, in terms of, list 5 priorities that you see as a priority. I mean, I don't know if is this that complicated? Maybe, I don't know.
I think, I'm just gonna add in, because Vern and I have had this discussions from the finance perspective, is we put the priorities together, because we know we can't do it all internally, right? So the question then becomes, do they get kicked off the list because we know we're not gonna wanna try to do some external funding or bonding? So I think, in my opinion, you gotta have a list, you put the list together, just like your kids put down the Christmas list, and you said, okay, well, guess what? To buy a bicycle and this and this, I may have to borrow money. They're not getting it. But the point is, until we have, I think, we get together and talk about what's our priorities, then we know whether or not. So isn't that kind of what we talked about, Vern, as well?
Correct, and I'm sorry, I step on these the rest of you, but what's the form that was passed out?
Just list your top 5
5 priorities. 25, and then the secondary 5 priorities, that's it.
Well, I guess just my 2 cents worth is there's more to be considered than just what was here today in the last 2.5 hours. That capital plan contains a number of other things too, and so we can't make this decision about prioritizing in a vacuum without seeing the total list, because there might be other things on there that are higher, lower priority. I mean, I didn't hear anything about a service department today, but I've heard about that a lot in the last year.
Well, we've talked about that, so that's not something new. Every councilman and yourself and me, we're aware of it. So if that's a priority, that's gonna be on my priority list. I mean, so it's not as though all these other items you refer to, they've all been exposed. And all I'm suggesting is that give me your top 5 and your secondary 5, and there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's just a matter of, I didn't think it'd be this complicated, quite frankly. I mean, last time I checked, you're a pretty smart group of guys, but maybe I'm wrong in terms of.
Well, the other intangible as Kevin mentions, he says, yeah, whether we have to borrow money. The other piece that comes to play is exactly what are the schools gonna do? And realize we don't have a crystal ball, but if they're trying to borrow money and we're trying to borrow money, then, I'm not gonna put a bunch of money on the Discover card for 25% or whatever it is. But that's why it seems more important to have a handle on the dollars and be realistic with the dollars that potentially is available for spending and how much is already accounted for.
But I think your neighbor and a colleague said, if you don't have a list, money doesn't matter. You have to have a list of your at least your priority. This isn't an exhaustive list. This is just what you see as a priority. That's it. And
I think the idea is to winnow down the priorities and then figure out how to pay for them.
And until you know your priorities and you whittle them down, money's not gonna matter. We'll debate, that's the
money is
next,
not a priority.
Dale, that's the next debate.
I mean,
Also, I appreciate Dave Snyderman just writing new TV in Kiwanis. I mean, let's just start there.
That's important.
That's great. I mean, it's like,
That's really important.
done, putting it on. Do that today.
Mayor, when Jim Gibbs came to us and talked about that, putting new infrastructure around, was it in anticipation of these types of conversations? Remember Jim Gibbs came to us?
You mean the fiber?
Yeah.
Fiber conversation?
Yeah, was he referring to having servers or is that?
No, that's something completely different. Because the service is all internal here. We're talking, what he was talking about is fiber going down the outside road.
Correct. Yeah, I didn't know if that was part of that.
Yeah, yes, we can.
I wouldn't That's the high school.
Yeah. Now they got a 2-hour meeting.
Well, you guys can go. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Thanks a lot.
Yes.
I'm gonna,
I know.
You got something for me before I leave, I see.
Dates for this.
I went to a Joe.
I'm gonna grab it really quick, Kevin.
Okay, okay, thanks.
Stay dry.
You know, and I think that, you know,
She probably was around to
Mayor, did you remember the Matz family from Independence?
Yeah.
That's right. Joni Matz came to the wake.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to school with, Vicky.
Vicky was it? Yeah, Vicky was a little, younger.
No, Vicky was,
Okay.
older.
She's older, yeah.
Connie was oldest, then Vicky,
Yeah, Joni was what, my sister's age or something?
and then Joe Junior was somewhere towards the end.
Yeah, Joe Junior was, Joe looks exactly like Joe Senior.
Really?
It was frightening. Came to my mom.
He's running the business, isn't he?
He is, yeah. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Mrs. Matz would always, every time we'd have company at the house, she would start working on that side of the house just to see what was going on, make sure everything was up good. Should be closed.
He's still alive?
Should, yeah.
Yeah, I would think so.
They died quite some time ago.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, yeah. Only reviewing my sheets. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I did.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, this was very productive. And we're gonna follow up on everything, right?
Yeah. You wanna fill one of these out?
There you go, Mayor. You might have reached out to a couple times, I don't know if you got my email. To get together?
Don't even start thinking about the city.
And I sent you a couple texts, yeah, the city phone, maybe that was your mistake.
And
I never had a response.
okay, well, yeah, I apologize.
No problem. Yeah, you talked about maybe
You don't think that?
Getting together. Okay. And so just so you know, I did reach out. That's okay.
No, it's weird, I get like deposits to be 10 at a time, and then sometimes it'll say that the message has not been downloaded from the server, so I get like a thing, but not the, it's a challenging proposition.
It's so, I'll tell you briefly.
Did we adjourn already?
We just did, yep, we just did, yep, 5:34.
Who is this one?
Yeah, two more pieces.
Never heard about this. It's never
Hold on a second, I gotta get.